There's a comforting thought out there that everything, every event, every accident, every weird coincidence is all part of some great divine plan. Like there's a celestial Google Calendar somewhere, and we're all just dots on God's to-do list. 8 a.m. Give Susan a flat tire so she learns patience. People love saying, it's all part of God's plan, as if that magically makes chaos feel organized. But if this is a plan, it's one of those plans that makes less and less sense the more you look at it. You know, like assembling IKEA furniture with the instructions printed in ancient Hebrew. Because if we really think about it, the plan is never clear, is it? There's no PDF attached. No update emails from heaven saying, hey, just a heads up. Famine next month. But don't worry, it's for character development. We're told it's mysterious and that the mystery itself is somehow proof of divine intelligence. But that's not a plan. That's just confusion with good branding. The funny part is how people can make the same event fit into the plan no matter what happens. Someone gets a promotion. God is rewarding them. Someone loses their job. God is testing them. Someone wins the lottery. God is generous. Someone gets struck by lightning. God works in mysterious ways. You could literally replace God with random chance, and nothing about the logic changes. It's like an all-purpose explanation, so flexible it can never be proven wrong, which, if we're honest, is the entire point. If something can't ever be wrong, it also can't ever be right. It's just sitting in a grey fog of maybe forever, convenient for avoiding accountability, but terrible for understanding anything. When you think about it, the phrase God's plan is a psychological blanket. It keeps people warm when the world gets cold and senseless. It's comforting to believe there's a reason behind suffering, even when there clearly isn't, because facing randomness head-on can be terrifying. We want patterns, even if we have to invent them. And that's what religion has always done best. It turns confusion into choreography, chaos into choreography, pain into purpose, and coincidence into confirmation. It gives meaning to everything except itself. Because the moment you ask, why is this the plan? The answer circles back to, because it's God's plan. It's a logic loop that eats its own tail. The wildest part is how the plan always happens to align perfectly with human bias. Every believer's version of God's plan conveniently reflects their culture, their politics, their social values. Apparently, God's eternal universal wisdom just happens to agree with their personal opinions about marriage, gender, and taxes. It's almost impressive. The universe's grand architect doubling as a moral spokesperson for your local community. If we strip the poetry away, what we really have isn't a plan. It's people trying to make sense of the unpredictable world they're stuck in. The plan is a story we tell ourselves to make the unpredictable feel predictable. The same way ancient people explained thunder as an angry sky god, or plagues as divine punishment. Today, it's just a bit more polished. God's will instead of Zeus sneezed. And that's what makes this whole plan thing kind of funny, not in a mean way, but in a human way, because deep down, it's a coping mechanism, dressed up in sacred language. If we can't control reality, we might as well pretend someone else is controlling it for us, even if that someone never replies to emails, prayers, or basic logic. The moment you start asking practical questions, the plan starts falling apart. If God has a plan, did he plan for free will? If he didn't, then we're just actors reading lines. If he did, then we're improvising. And if we're improvising, how is there still a plan? It's like trying to believe in both fate and freedom at the same time, which sounds deep until you realize it's just philosophical multitasking with no Wi-Fi signal. People often say we can't understand God's plan because we're human, which is fine. But then why talk about it at all? If it's beyond comprehension, shouldn't we stop pretending to comprehend it? It's like insisting your goldfish understands your career choices because you feed it every day. And that's the central contradiction. We can't know the plan, but we know it exists. We can't see the map, but we swear we're headed somewhere meaningful. We have no evidence of direction, but we insist on a destination. That's not faith. That's optimism with a halo. It's fascinating how people can look at the same disaster and call it proof of design instead of chaos. A plane crash becomes God calling people home. A drought becomes God testing faith. And a miracle becomes God showing mercy. But when good things happen, like vaccines or technology or science, those are often chalked up to human achievement. Apparently, divine planning takes weekends off. And yet somehow the plan survives every contradiction, every failure, every unanswered prayer, every random tragedy. Because the less it makes sense, the more mysterious it's said to be. It's the only plan in history that gains credibility by being incomprehensible. The beauty of mystery is that it's the ultimate insurance policy. When something good happens, the plan worked. When something bad happens, the plan is just mysterious. Either way, the plan stays untouched, like a sacred get out of logic-free card. It's funny how that works. In every other area of life, a plan that makes no sense gets thrown out immediately. If your GPS keeps rerouting you into the ocean, you don't say, "Ah, yes, this is the mysterious wisdom of Google Maps." You delete the app. But when it's God's plan, suddenly confusion itself becomes a virtue. And that's what's always struck me, how religion flips the meaning of confusion. Normally, confusion is a problem. It's something to solve, to understand, to clear up. But under divine branding, confusion becomes holy, a sign that you're just not ready to understand the plan yet. The less sense it makes, the more faithful you're supposed to feel. It's like being congratulated for not reading the terms and conditions. But what if confusion isn't proof of a higher plan? What if it's just confusion? The world is complicated enough on its own. Life, nature, biology, politics. They're chaotic systems, not moral puzzles. Things happen for 1,000 little reasons that have nothing to do with cosmic scripts. Randomness isn't an insult to meaning. It's just how reality operates. Still, people would rather believe they're living through a divine screenplay than an open-ended improvisation. The idea that everything happens for something is deeply addictive. It gives every moment a personal connection to the infinite. You didn't get the job, that's because something better is coming. Your flight got delayed. Maybe you were meant to meet that stranger in the airport lounge. It's destiny with a smiley face sticker. The irony is that randomness often produces the same emotional comfort if you just rebrand it slightly. People love serendipity, happy accidents, chance meetings, the beauty of unpredictability. But call the same thing meaningless coincidence, and it suddenly sounds cold. We like chaos when it feels cute. We hate it when it feels cruel. And maybe that's why God's plan survives, because it's a soft landing for the things we can't control. The plan absorbs pain, it recycles fear into meaning. It tells you your suffering isn't wasted. It's part of something bigger, even if that something is never explained. And that's a powerful story to believe, even if it's just a story. Of course, if we step back and look at the supposed plan globally, things get even more absurd. Every religion claims to know at least part of the plan. They can't agree on lunch, but somehow they all have exclusive access to the universe's final draft. Each one promises the ultimate truth, which coincidentally always includes donations, obedience, and a strict dress code. And if you question the plan, that's when you hear the classic defense, "We're not supposed to understand it," which is a brilliant move. It stops the conversation cold. It's like arguing with someone who says, "You'll get it when you're older," but then you turn 80 and still don't. It's amazing how much of human suffering has been brushed aside with that one sentence. God works in mysterious ways. Wars, diseases, disasters, all folded neatly into the mystery folder. If an engineer said, "Your bridge collapsed, but my methods are mysterious," they'd be in jail. But when God does it, it's divine. And then there's the micro version, people using the plan to justify their own decisions. Someone breaks up with you. It wasn't meant to be. Someone buys a car they can't afford. God wanted me to have this blessing. The plan is basically the spiritual version of a plot twist. No matter how bad it looks, you're told it will make sense in the sequel. What's strange is that this mindset can actually make people less empathetic. If everything is part of a plan, then suffering isn't something to fix, it's something to accept. Why help the poor if their poverty is meant to teach them something? Why stop violence if God allows it for a reason? Once everything is divinely intentional, compassion starts looking like interference. And yet, when tragedy hits them, suddenly the plan doesn't feel so elegant anymore. The script always sounds inspiring until you're the character being written out in the second act. Then it's not mysterious, it's unfair. The human brain loves meaning, but it loves comfort even more. And the plan gives both, as long as you don't ask too many questions. But that's where the real humor lies, in how elastic the plan is. It can stretch to fit any event, any outcome, any contradiction. You can't break it because it has no shape. You can't disprove it because it never says anything definite. It's like a cloud pretending to be a map. Even when people think they're following the plan, they can't agree on the directions. One person claims God told them to start a charity. Another claims God told them to burn it down. Both insist they're being guided. So which one's right? Maybe neither. Maybe being guided just feels like conviction and that deep emotional certainty that you're doing the right thing. That's the tricky part about conviction. It feels like truth even when it isn't. Every generation has believed they were aligned with divine intent. Crusaders, inquisitors, reformers, televangelists, all convinced they were following the same universal blueprint. If the plan is that inconsistent, maybe it's not divine at all. Maybe it's just human improvisation with sacred subtitles. And the best part, every time the plan fails, when prophecies flop, when predictions fall flat, the response isn't to question the plan, but to reinterpret it. The deadline wasn't wrong, it was symbolic. The failure wasn't real, it was part of a greater purpose. It's the kind of flexibility conspiracy theorists would envy. If any human project worked like that, we'd call it delusional. But slap the word divine on it, and suddenly it's inspiring. The only job on earth where being consistently wrong earns you eternal respect is profit. And the thing is, no one seems bothered by this constant moving of goalposts. It's almost like people enjoy being wrong as long as they can call it faith. When the plan doesn't happen as expected, it just means you misunderstood it. Not that it was nonsense to begin with. That's the beauty of divine PR. The message never fails, only the audience does. Every prediction that falls apart somehow becomes a test of devotion. Oh, you thought the world would end last year. That was just God testing your patience. Right. Because nothing says divine love like psychological gaslighting on a cosmic scale. But the funniest part isn't that people believe the plan, and it's how confidently they fill in the blanks themselves. You'd think a divine plan would come with divine clarity, but no. Everyone's making their own fan theories about what God really meant. It's like the world's longest running group project where no one has ever seen the actual assignment, and yet people talk about it with total confidence. I know God put me here for a reason. Okay, but which reason? And how do you know? Because something good eventually happened after something bad. That's not evidence. That's pattern recognition in a hoodie. Humans are so good at connecting dots that we'll draw a straight line through pure noise and call it destiny. You buy a coffee, spill it on yourself, miss your bus, meet someone at the stop, start dating them, and suddenly it's divine design. Never mind that it could have just as easily been an accident. No, it's fate, it's cosmic matchmaking, it's God moonlighting as a romantic comedy writer. But when you really peel it back, all of it is just human storytelling instincts in overdrive. We can't help it. Our brains crave a narrative, beginnings, middles, ends. We need villains, heroes, lessons, closure. And when the real world doesn't offer that, religion steps in to fill the plot holes. It gives randomness a script, and we happily follow it, even when the dialogue doesn't make sense. Still, the plan is inconsistent in such delightful ways. You'll see athletes thanking God for a win, but never blaming Him for a loss. As if the Almighty is deeply invested in basketball scores but totally indifferent to famine. People will say, God cured my cancer, but never God gave me cancer. It's selective gratitude, divine credit where it's convenient. And in that way, God's plan works like a spiritual filter. It filters out guilt, confusion, and contradiction. It turns complexity into clarity, no matter how absurd the result. Like if God already knows everything, including what we'll choose, then why give us free will at all? Why set up a test when you already know the answers? That's not a plan, that's cosmic busywork. The free will loophole is one of my favorites. God lets you choose, but He already knows what you'll choose. So you're free, but also not. You're responsible, but also not. It's like being told, you can drive wherever you want, as long as you stay on this one road. And if you crash, well, that was part of the plan too. Even prayer becomes part of the confusion. People pray for the plan to change, for help, healing, success. But if everything is already planned, then prayer can't change anything. If it can, then the plan wasn't perfect to begin with. Either way, someone's customer service department in heaven needs serious restructuring. Yet somehow no one seems bothered by that contradiction. Because prayer isn't really about changing God's mind, it's about soothing our own. It's therapy disguised as conversation. You talk to the ceiling, feel calmer afterward, and call it divine interaction, which is fine. Just don't pretend it's altering the fabric of the universe. And that's what makes this idea so slippery. It's built to adapt to anything. A child survives a car crash? Miracle. A child dies in a car crash? God called them home. The same event, two completely opposite interpretations. And somehow both strengthen belief instead of breaking it. That's not logic, and that's emotional Teflon. The human mind is incredibly talented at justifying contradictions. We'll build an entire worldview out of mismatched puzzle pieces and call it truth. We'll see meaning in coincidences, intention in randomness, and purpose in pain, because it's easier than facing a universe that doesn't care about our plans. And I get it. The idea that no one's in control can feel unbearable. It's comforting to think someone, somewhere, knows what's happening, even if that someone is notoriously silent about the details. The silence itself becomes divine, like a teacher who never shows up to class but still gets 5-star reviews for mystery. But the real confusion starts when you look at how differently the plan seems to play out depending on where you're born. A child born in rural India gets one version of the plan. Another born in Texas gets a completely different one. A third in Saudi Arabia? Totally different again. All told by people equally certain they've got the right manual. It's as if God's plan changes according to zip code. It's almost impressive. Divine truth, now available in your local language and customized to your local politics. Every version claims exclusivity, and every version insists the others are wrong. If that's the plan, it's a marketing strategy, not a moral one. And yet through all this, people keep saying it's all about love. God loves you, they insist, but apparently this love involves earthquakes, pandemics, birth defects, and plagues, all because it builds character. That's like saying your partner broke your arm to strengthen the relationship. The deeper you look, the more the plan feels like an elaborate patch job. Every contradiction requires another explanation. Every tragedy demands another loophole, until eventually the whole structure is just layers of excuses stacked on top of wishful thinking. And somehow, that's sacred. The more you think about it, the more God's plan starts to sound like one of those long-running TV shows that's been rewritten too many times. The original idea might have been simple, but now the plot's so tangled even the writers have no clue what's going on. Every time there's a plot hole, they throw in a flashback or some divine mystery to keep viewers hooked. And the audience nods along, pretending it all makes sense. It's not that the idea of a plan is inherently bad, it's just that the supposed planner never shows up for press conferences. We're told he's all powerful, all knowing, all loving, yet somehow also all invisible and oddly cryptic about his intentions. The only ones doing the talking are people claiming to speak for him, which is convenient because you can make any claim sound divine when the original author never fact checks you. And those spokespeople have had a long, successful run, from popes to prophets to influencers with Jesus in their Instagram handles. Everyone's got a hot take on what the plan is. Apparently, the creator of galaxies also micromanages your dating life, wardrobe choices, and whether you eat bacon on Sundays. Truly, an omnipotent multitasker. But here's the weird part. People have such wildly different definitions of the same God. Some say he's wrathful, others say he's gentle. Some claim he's watching your every move. Others say he's chill about your mistakes. It's like everyone's describing the same person, but from completely different hallucinations. If that's the plan, it's not divine. It's improv theatre. And yet no one wants to admit how human all of this sounds. God's anger looks suspiciously like human anger. God's forgiveness sounds exactly like the kind of selective forgiveness people give when they need to feel morally superior. It's as if we built a cosmic mirror, stared into it, and called our reflection the divine. Which makes sense, because if you were writing a plan to explain everything, you'd naturally make the planner resemble yourself. It's comforting to imagine the universe being run by someone who thinks like us, values like us, and holds grudges just as passionately. It makes the unknown feel familiar, predictable, less terrifying. But that comfort comes with a price, the illusion of understanding. Once you believe everything has a divine reason, you stop looking for real ones. Why study disease if sickness is God's will? Why prevent climate change if disasters are signs of the end times? Why take responsibility if everything's already written in a heavenly diary? The plan becomes an excuse, a way to stop thinking too deeply about anything that hurts or confuses us. The idea of the plan survives not because it's true, but because it's useful. It gives chaos a coat of paint. It tells people their pain is valuable, their confusion meaningful, their losses somehow part of a celestial spreadsheet. It's the universe's version of trust the process, but with no evidence that the process actually exists. What's really impressive is how adaptable the plan is to modern life. Ancient prophets saw visions in deserts. Now people see divine messages in Wi-Fi passwords and traffic lights. Someone cuts them off on the road. God's teaching me patience. Their phone dies right before they send an embarrassing text. God saved me. Their pizza arrives cold. God's testing me. It's the holy version of blaming Mercury for being in retrograde. The modern world has turned divine planning into personal branding. Everyone's the star of their own spiritual reality show, with God as the producer making edits to their life for dramatic effect. I didn't fail the exam, it just wasn't part of my journey. Sure. Maybe. Or maybe you just didn't study. But admitting that feels less cinematic. And that's the thing. God's plan isn't just an explanation, it's an aesthetic. It adds drama to the ordinary, purpose to the pointless, and destiny to dumb luck. It turns life into a story worth telling. Because it just happened sounds boring, but it was meant to happen sounds deep enough to put on a mug. What's truly fascinating, though, is how confidently people claim to understand God's preferences, even when those preferences match their own too perfectly. You'll notice that God always seems to hate the same people his followers do, and conveniently approves of whatever they already wanted to do. It's almost as if God's plan is just moral outsourcing, letting an imaginary boss approve your decisions so you don't have to feel guilty about them. And it's not limited to individuals. Entire nations have claimed divine sponsorship. Wars have been fought by both sides believing they were following the same celestial strategy. God apparently has the diplomatic consistency of a reality show contestant. Each side says, God is with us, as if the divine strategist is hedging his bets. If this were a chess game, he'd be playing against himself and still claiming victory. But the most confusing part of all is the moral inconsistency. If a child gets sick and recovers, it's a miracle. If the child dies, it's part of God's plan. Either way, the explanation glorifies the planner. You can't lose, that's the brilliance. It's belief proof. No outcome can contradict it. It's like betting on every horse in the race, then declaring faith in the winner. And people defend that logic passionately. They'll say, we can't judge God's plan by human standards, which sounds noble, until you realize human standards are all we have. How else are we supposed to evaluate justice, kindness, or love? By cosmic vibes. If something looks cruel, feels cruel, and results in suffering, calling it holy doesn't make it less cruel, it just rebrands it. It's strange how quickly morality gets redefined in service of the plan. If a human dictator controlled your every move, demanded worship, punished thought crimes, and threatened eternal torture for disobedience, you'd call them evil. But slap the word divine on it, and suddenly it's holy order. It's the same logic, just with better lighting. And all this confusion, all this mental gymnastics, is somehow supposed to prove how wise the plan is. But what if the confusion isn't divine at all? What if it's just the sound of humans trying to rationalize randomness into order? Maybe the plan was never written in the sky. Maybe it's scribbled in our heads, a story we made to stop ourselves from screaming into the void. The most absurd part: we're told we're part of a plan so vast and perfect that we could never understand it, but we're also told we'll be judged for not following it correctly. That's like being graded on an exam written in an unknown language by a teacher who never shows up, and still being told it's your fault. And yet, people keep believing. Not because the plan makes sense, but because it feels better than the alternative. The idea that there is no plan, that life is unpredictable, fragile, and maybe meaningless, that's a hard truth to sit with. It takes courage to face the silence without dressing it up as destiny. The hardest thing about giving up the idea of a divine plan isn't losing faith, it's losing the illusion of control. Because God's plan is really about control, isn't it? The belief that someone, somewhere, has their hands on the wheel, even when everything feels like it's spinning off the road. It's comforting to think your pain has a reason, that every detour is a destination in disguise. The thought that it might just be a random accident of existence. That's a much colder universe to live in. But maybe it's also a truer one. Because when you stop believing someone else has scripted your life, you start realizing the only author left is you. And that's terrifying at first, but also liberating. Without the plan, you don't get cosmic excuses. You can't say, it was meant to be when you mess up. You can't outsource your decisions to a silent supervisor in the sky. You have to own them. You have to admit that things go wrong because sometimes they just do. Not because some invisible being needed to teach you a moral lesson through food poisoning. The universe doesn't run on lessons. It runs on physics, chance, and an awful lot of coincidence. A tornado doesn't care about sin, and a rainbow doesn't care about virtue. Nature isn't moral, it just is. The meaning is what we give it. And maybe that's the point we keep missing. There doesn't need to be a plan for life to matter. It can matter because we choose to make it matter. But of course, that's a much heavier burden. It's easier to believe a grand puppeteer is behind the curtain, pulling strings and organizing chaos into something meaningful. It's harder to accept that we're just tiny, conscious creatures trying to make sense of a vast, indifferent universe, and somehow still managing to laugh, love, and build IKEA furniture together despite it. That's the part I find most inspiring. Not divine design, but human persistence. The fact that, in a world with no cosmic script, we still care about kindness, fairness, and truth. We still try to make the story better, even when there's no guarantee that anyone's keeping score. If that's not miraculous, I don't know what is. And honestly, maybe confusion itself is underrated. Maybe not knowing is what keeps us curious, inventive, alive. A perfect plan would leave no room for discovery. If everything were preordained, every choice meaningless, every outcome fixed, life would just be a rerun. The plot twists, the uncertainty, the mistakes, that's the good stuff. That's the part that makes us human. So perhaps the real joke isn't that God's plan is confusing, it's that confusion might be the only thing that's truly ours. The chaos we keep trying to escape is also the freedom we secretly crave. We want structure, but we love surprise. We pray for order, but we live for the unexpected. The divine might be hiding in the very randomness we fear most. If there is a plan, it's probably written in pencil, smudged by time, rewritten by evolution, and interpreted by billions of confused humans trying their best not to lose their minds. And if there isn't, well, maybe that's even better, because then everything we build, everything we love, everything we fix or forgive or fight for, actually means something because we chose it. And honestly, that's a much more beautiful kind of order, the one we create ourselves. It's funny though. Whenever people say, God has a plan, I always want to ask, is he taking feedback? Because if this is the final version, the editing department clearly fell asleep halfway through. But if we're the ones still writing it, if we're the ones with pens in our hands, then maybe confusion isn't a sign of divine mystery at all. Maybe it's just the creative process of existence. So maybe the plan, if you insist on calling it that, isn't divine, but human. A million small stories overlapping in beautiful, chaotic ways. A planet full of confused creatures doing their best to turn uncertainty into purpose. And somehow succeeding, at least sometimes. And if that's the case, then confusion was never a flaw in the plan. It was the plan, the first step, the middle, and probably the last. Because through confusion comes curiosity, and through curiosity comes progress. The mess is where meaning is made. So, maybe God's plan isn't step one, confuse everyone. Maybe step one is just live. Figure it out as you go. Laugh at the absurdity. Question everything. Help where you can. Love when it makes no sense. Be kind even when the world doesn't reward it. And if there's any kind of cosmic meaning to all this, it's probably hidden somewhere in that, not in obedience, not in certainty, but in the courage to make sense of confusion without pretending someone else already has. Because if the plan was to confuse everyone, well, mission accomplished.